right now. I want to welcome from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, John Diedrich is with us once more. John, thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Yesterday afternoon, you reported an update in the stories that you've in the Journal-Sentinel have been doing on the ATF storefront operations, and what you found is that 4 of these agents involved in the Milwaukee sting received what amounts to the lightest amount of administrative punishment possible.
That's right, Cam. What we found out yesterday in a letter from ATF to members of Congress is that these individuals who were responsible for what was known as Operation Fearless here in Milwaukee received what's known as a memoranda of caution. And talking to veterans of the agency, that's really just hardly a hiccup on your record. I'm not going to slow you down in terms of progressing in the hierarchy and so forth. One of the special agents was recommended to receive a reprimand, a proposal of reprimand, but ultimately that was rolled back to one of these memoranda of caution.
And what that actually means, as you say, the ATF won't say, but the sources that you talk to say that this won't impact their record at all. You know, remind folks, if you can, John, what exactly this storefront operation did. What did they do wrong in Operation Fearless?
Well, in Operation Fearless, this was a storefront set up in Milwaukee to purchase. The aim was to purchase illegal guns and drugs. They had a cover story, and the agents were acting in an undercover capacity. They ran into a number of problems. They ended up using a man with a low IQ in the 50s range, which is profoundly low, to promote their store out in the community, handing out flyers, riding around on his bike, and then ultimately ended up charging him. They arrested 4 of the wrong people at the conclusion of the operation. One of the agents, the ATF agents, had 3 of his guns stolen, including a fully automatic weapon, which remains unrecovered. They allowed armed felons to leave the store. The storefront itself was burglarized. And so they had a whole series of problems that happened in this store. ATF headquarters came in at the conclusion and after our investigation came out and concluded that there were a lot of local problems here, but that this was just a local issue. We found our subsequent investigation found that there were problems of this sort in these storefront operations across the country.
Do you know, John, what, if any, punishment was handed down to agents involved in those other operations outside of Milwaukee?
We don't know of any. And talking to folks on the congressional side, ATF has been largely unresponsive to their requests there, but a lot of the same things that happened in Milwaukee, and there was even more that happened in other places. For instance, in Portland, an operation was opened up across the street from a school. They claimed to not know that the school was there, which seems like a stretch. I mean, it's right across the street. But that location helped them increase charges. And then they convinced a low IQ gentleman in that operation to get a tattoo on his neck promoting the storefront. Now, the ATF was ordered in that operation to pay for the removal of the tattoo, but we don't know, and the ATF is not saying at this point whether anybody was punished as a result of that. We do know probably the most high publicity sort of move that happened as a result of this is there was an individual by the name of Bernard Zaper, who was the special agent in charge of the division where the Milwaukee operation happened, the field division. He was promoted shortly after the operation, and then after our reporting, he ultimately was brought back to the field division level, the special agent in charge division level, but they put him in charge of arguably the most high-profile and crucial of the field divisions of ATF. This is Phoenix, following the Fast and Furious problems. And so in terms of a punishment, that's about what we've seen. Interestingly, Director Todd Jones said he had full confidence in Zaper at a congressional hearing earlier this year, but then orders came down to move Zaper. to Newark. Rather than do that, he stayed in Phoenix. And interestingly, Phoenix is home to him, and so the argument from members of Congress is essentially this was a taxpayer-funded move to where he wanted to retire anyway.
Wow, that is, and you know, again, he was the replacement after Fast and Furious came out, and was it Bill McMahon? Right? Was he in charge of the?
Yes, that's
Phoenix
right.
office?
And after everything that happened, and that's really why Todd Jones says he was brought into the agency, was post Fast and Furious to help clean it up. And this is where there's been a real sense of consternation on the part of members of Congress, and you guys may have been following, but Congressman Sensenbrenner is preparing a bill that would dissolve the ATF and fold its responsibilities into other Department of Justice entities. That bill has not been drafted yet, but it's expected to come before the end of the year. And what's interesting about that is you're seeing members of both sides of the aisle asking questions. You know, the last person to actually propose such a bill was John Conyers from Michigan, and so you know it's an interesting coalition that's coming together of both Republicans and Democrats saying, you know, do we need to look for another way, a different way to accomplish these functions in the federal government?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, as you say, clearly the frustration level has gotten to that point, and when, you know, again, as you say, when B. Todd Jones was appointed, I know that was one of the things that he said that he wanted to do. And, you know, if it appears that what has happened instead is this sort of bureaucratic shuffling where you move people to new offices, but the culture doesn't change, the problems don't really change. Maybe, again, they've pulled back from doing these storefront operations for now, John, but they've not said that they're bad ideas and that they won't do them in the future. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I mean, they've said, you know, we're not gonna do them till we can do them properly. But you know, at the bottom of it, there's really a question of whether you know these are really getting after the sort of illegal gun rings that you're trying to get after in the first place. Because the problem is when you open up an entity like this, you really have to deal with just general members of the public. It's like any business, you know, that you have to deal with whoever walks in the door. The problem is, as a government agency, now you take responsibility for who walks in the door. And, you know, and if you have people such as people with low IQs and so forth, well, you know, and you have to deal with them. And talking to law enforcement experts and veterans of undercover operations, this is really a very indiscriminate, non-pinpoint way to go about law enforcement. Much better would be to sort of be following intelligence rather than just to sort of plop down in a neighborhood, open the doors, and see what walks in. You know, some of the veterans that I've talked to just say this is just lazy policing. The prosecutors like it because they always have good video, and almost nothing goes to trial because you've got the video and you've got the individual, and he's a felon and he has a weapon, and so done. But the question is, does this really get after, you know, what you're trying to, you know, accomplish? There's also this question of with ATF, and this was been raised by Congressman Sensenbrenner, is, you know, there's so much overlap that you're seeing between and among the FBI and DEA and ATF and so forth. Do all these agencies need to be competing, you know, sort of for the same slice of the pie, or could this be done more efficiently? Now, what's interesting is so far the advocacy groups out there, both on the gun rights and gun control side, are united against this proposal and are saying, we don't think this is a good idea. The ATF should stay around, probably for different reasons, but nevertheless, it's such an unknown at this point. But it's bringing up an interesting discussion. And you know, one of the ideas is that, you know, hey, the agency hasn't had a director for 7 years. Maybe they need a chance to succeed. But the members of Congress I've talked to have said they've seen enough already by taking this B.J. Zaper and putting him in charge of Phoenix and a couple other things that have happened. They feel like we got to look at a different way to do it. And in these storefronts and how they've unfolded is all becoming very relevant for their discussions as to how to proceed.
Yeah. Well, listen, John, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. It's good talking to you. Thanks again for the fantastic coverage of this issue, and hope we can talk again soon.
I would be very happy to. Thanks again.
You bet. John Diedrich joined us with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this afternoon.